All right. I am just so pleased today. I'm blessed to welcome someone who I've had the privilege of teaching with, but who I call a friend, and that's Dr. Brent Aucoin. And back in 2019, Dr. Aucoin and I had the privilege of co-teaching with him, and he did a lecture on just the illegality of the Civil War. And in the midst of that, brought up some topics that I thought it would be so important for us to share. So we're going to spend a little time today just digging into that, leaning into that. And I want to just again note that this is a person who I respect very highly and has much to say in this area. Dr. Aucoin is Associate Dean of the College of Academic Affairs at the great institution, Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. He's also a professor of history there. Having done much of his work in Louisiana and in Arkansas, he comes with just a wealth of knowledge. And so, Brent, it's good to have you here today. Thank you for taking the time to be a part of this discussion.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Brent, you've done a great job of laying out just the historical movement through Reconstruction as the South then came back into power. But how did the Lost Cause, what role did it play in reestablishing white authority, white power in the South? And what role did, Confederate monuments play in the midst of that?
Yeah. I think the Lost Cause was what prompted the efforts by white Southerners to sort of take back control of the region from Republican and black rule, as they put it, during Reconstruction. And they did that through a variety of means, such as disenfranchising black males and instituting racial segregation and turning a blind eye to the lynching of African Americans. Those were all designed ultimately to send the message that the South was going to be a white man's land, country, that whites were in control and blacks needed to know their place and remain in that place. And that's where I see Confederate monuments as being a part of that broader white supremacy campaign. No credible historian sort of doubts or it doesn't acknowledge the white supremacy campaign. That's just a historical fact that it occurred. One of the more contemporary debates is whether or not Confederate statues were a part of that. And I think scholars have shown that it clearly was, that putting those monuments on courthouse lawns and public property and prominent places was part of sending that message that blacks needed to know their place, and their place in the South was going to be below whites, that it's going to be subservient, and that they were to defer to white control over the region. And we can talk about that whole campaign if you want, but that's where I see Confederate monuments as playing, coming about. And that's when we see Confederate monuments being erected, is in the midst of this white supremacy campaign.
So really their location sent as much a message as, the historical marking or monument aspect of that.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that take the same statue and you put it in a museum, put it on a battlefield, put it in a cemetery, but then put that same statue in front of the courthouse or in front of the state house. And it sends a different message. In the cemetery or on the battlefield, you might be saying, okay, we're as white Southerners, we're honoring our ancestors. We're not necessarily holding up them in reverence. We're just honoring them. But you put it in that front of the state house or in front of the courthouse, and you're saying, this is what we as a community, this is what we as a government honor and revere, and what we hold up as being heroic and good. And even if it's just a statue of a generic Confederate soldier, not say Stonewall Jackson or Robert E. Lee, but just a generic soldier, you still can't disassociate that generic soldier from the ultimate war aim and the cause of the Confederacy, which was ultimately white supremacy, which is ultimately the maintenance of the system of slavery.
Mm.
And so that's why I don't think every Confederate statue necessarily has to come down. I'm fine with them on battlefields and in museums or cemeteries, but the ones that were put in public places or government property or very prominent places, like a major intersection, that's sending a different message, and the message that maybe whites don't necessarily have a problem with, but others in the community are not going to appreciate the message that statue represents. And I think we're seeing that today, that people expressing that very idea, and gone beyond that, but at the very least they're saying that is not us, that doesn't represent our community, and that is not what we want to present to the rest of the world.
That's a very good point. So we're not saying erase history. What we're saying is remember what those historical markers represent, and that's greatly seen in where they're present as well. Thank you for that.